You're listening to propsHR, an engaging startup. I'm your host, Cindy Windsor, along with my husband, Brad. We hope you'll follow our journey as a tech startup for employee recognition software with a social conscience. In addition to talking about our startup journey, we'll also talk about employee engagement and corporate charitable giving. If you'd like to learn more about our product, visit our website at propshr.com. Hi, I'm Cindy Windsor.
I'm Brad Windsor.
And we are here with a very special guest, Lynn Miller. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you, and you as an HR analyst, you're going to really help us understand a few things. So the topic today is HR technology and the modern workforce. So I think the best way to start is let's talk about some of the vocabulary around HR technology.
Well, there certainly is a lot of new vocabulary, especially in the area of attracting talent and sourcing talent. Mm-hmm. So lots of words that people are using are recruitment marketing, sourcing, talent attraction. Mm-hmm. They kind of all mean the same thing. Then once you get into kind of bringing them into the company, it used to be called an applicant tracking system. Mm-hmm. Now it's more called candidate experience. And then you move them into applicant tracking. So what seemed like one or two things is now like 15.
So how do people figure out what the correct terminology is to find these types of technology?
I think that being at conferences or being at events and getting educated helps, and really getting familiar with what it is you want to move forward with your workforce will make a difference too. And as you do that, you start to learn what things are called. Because finding talent is getting more complicated, the tools for achieving that are more sophisticated, and that's really what's caused the boom.
And the change in terminology, does that cause that change in terminology?
No, I would blame that all on the vendors.
They want it to seem more exciting, so
they'll come up with new names for everything. So okay. Some call it candidate experience, some call it sourcing. There's all kinds of words, mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've really wished we could do is create a new vocabulary that everybody starts to kind of align with, so that the buyers don't get so confused, because I feel bad for the buyers.
Well, there is so much technology out there that we can use for the workforce. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to know where to go for that, and what terminology to use to do the searches on that type of technology.
It's true. I think education is critical, but nobody has a lot of time for it. Well, it's counterintuitive sometimes. I think the more that HR leaders and HR tech leaders mm-hmm. start, if they could reach out and kind of collaborate or congregate in certain places so that they can learn together, that would make a huge difference and take way less time for them when it's time to make decisions.
What do you think customers are looking for right now in HR technology?
Well, I think it depends on the size of the company. Mm-hmm. But in general, I've interviewed companies. Regardless of the size of the company, what they're looking for is something that is going to adapt to the changes in their business.
Right.
Easily. And if you have too rigid a system, that's already a red flag.
Are you speaking about a particular type of HR technology, like, for instance, from the candidate experience side or HCM systems?
Well, if you look at kind of all the legacy core HR systems mm-hmm. and the legacy talent management systems, those are fairly rigid.
Right.
Backbones and structures, and they don't work in a modern workforce. Yeah. So some of those organizations have actually adapted their technology, mm-hmm. and some of them have adapted them better than others.
Right.
And so as organizations are continuing to evolve how they work mm-hmm. and how they do business, so do the technologies need to do that.
What's the best way for a company to go about finding HR tech products that are a good fit for them?
I think don't rely on social media. That's not the answer. It's nice to scour and research yourself, right. But you are looking through a very specific filter, which is yours, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So I think it depends on what it is you really want to focus on. What aspect of the employee life cycle are you focused on? Are you focused on making it as easy and fast as possible to bring new employees in, mm-hmm. find and attract them and bring them in? Or are you focused on developing them and creating visibility throughout the organization? Or are you focused on that plus measuring success of whatever you do? core technology, core HR technology, and talent management, or HCM, are really converging. And people are going to do the best they can to really connect those two sets of workflows.
Right.
And whatever doesn't work within those two workflows, they'll add on. But they're going to keep looking to put all that together, because being able to track what's going on with the employee and what they're doing and what their performance is has become way too complicated.
So do you feel more people are looking at overall systems, or they're looking at best in breed, like for these individual aspects of technology?
I'm not sure they know what they're looking for all the time.
Right.
I think they're looking for what they need to run their business. So I think it's really important to keep in mind that what they thought they were looking for before is not what they're looking for now. For example, if you're looking for a core HR technology and you want to be able to have that manage how the employees get compensated and paid and tracking their records, that's one thing.
Right.
Okay? If you want to use that same source and then use that to track performance and their capabilities, that's a second thing. A lot of companies are putting those two things together, but they started having them separate. So now they're looking to put them together. The third thing is, how do you measure performance? Looking at performance as opposed to just the capabilities and skills, that is something that some of these suites do just okay, and some of them do just a little bit more than okay.
Right.
But none of them are as flexible as a flexibly designed performance management solution. In the case of applicant tracking for core HR and HCM, some companies are doing everything with one suite, like Workday. But then they say, the thing I really want to be able to do for applicant tracking and candidate experience this doesn't fit, Workday doesn't fit. So I'm going to add this other thing.
Interesting. Even though they've invested that much time and money into Workday, and they are paying for that, they do another add-on.
They do.
Another product.
So they commit to Workday being their system of record, or Oracle being their system of record, or SAP being their system of record. And then they say they are not willing to sacrifice anything to get every candidate that they need that has the talent they're looking for.
Yeah, then there's the opposite situation where someone picks up something like Workday, and Workday has a comp tool in it, so they get rid of their best of breed comp tool and kind of lower the overall experience for things. We've seen that actually over the years, where someone will pick up a large system and just assume that all these other best of breeds must go away, and they get a little more lukewarm all across the board.
Yeah, customers tend to complain about that. I've talked to one organization that actually had a 7-year strategy for doing their HR transformation and took a set of workflows over the course of 7 years. It's funny because they're at the end of their 7 years, and now they're going back to the first thing they did and changing it. So it's pretty interesting, because that's how fast the market's changed.
Well, that's true. You're seeing so much more in HR technology these days. It seems like there's a lot of new things coming out. Like you were talking about performance. Well, think about how performance and reviews are changing right now. They're morphing. It's very interesting.
They are very much morphing. It's no longer an event.
How does the size and growth rate of a company affect the type of technology that it uses or should use?
A lot. It does. It affects it a lot. For example, if you start out in one country like the United States and then you need to go global, that has a dramatic effect on the HR technology that you implement or don't implement. That's where multiple systems start to creep up.
Comp tools get infinitely more complicated. It's like a new dimension when you add multiple currencies. We experience that as well.
Yeah.
Very daunting.
The other area where it adds complexity is that so many more people are outsourcing certain kinds of talent, or really I would say insourcing external talent. So they're using outside people as if they're employees. I wouldn't call them contractors per se, but they're bringing them in to work as part of the organization, and they weren't originally hired to be permanent employees.
Is there a name for that kind of employee? Because I actually know one who works for a certain unnamed pharmaceutical company, has been a consultant for about 3 years, and I think once every year or two has to take a month off.
Yes.
That is that kind of thing, long-term placements.
Yes,
They're not
it is.
really employees.
Right, it's long-term placements, and internationally, it adds X times of complexity. So really, for now, if you were thinking about doing for having a whole contingent workforce or a workforce that was part of the organization but are not employees, and you wanted them from all over the world, but for cost reasons, efficiency reasons, then you really need to go with an expert that understands all those rules.
Yeah, and even little companies do that. I worked for a place that had consultants all over the world. It's a 220-person company. So I guess to sum up, geographic growth is actually probably the most impactful, right? Just increasing your headcount 20% a year. Okay, you might outgrow a little system, but geographic growth sounds kind of critical.
Geographic growth has a huge impact, and also acquisitions have a huge impact.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, if you diversify and you start out in manufacturing and then you add services, the whole way people operate is completely different. One of the things that we're learning is that the experience for the employee is the thing that's really driving change a lot, because, for example, in a financial services organization, all they care about is if the employees can get whatever they need on their mobile devices.
You know, what's interesting is as these maybe terminologies are changing, job titles are changing too. Now you see HR specialists who maybe it's not called HR specialists, it's called employee experience specialists.
Yes.
So it's like looking at employees in a better light.
Well, they are your customers.
Well, exactly. Well, they're their most valuable aspect to a company.
Mm-hmm. They are your customers, and really anything that makes it hard for a prospective employee or a current employee to do their work gives them pause, and just enough pause for somebody to scoop them up and take them.
Yeah, you're right. Companies really have to be on the lookout of keeping their employees engaged.
Mm-hmm. So employee engagement, that what used to be what we just talked about performance management.
Mm-hmm.
Well, employee engagement is like a whole completely different game. It's gone from an annual survey to a pulse survey. They want to know every day how the employees are doing. That's part of the employee experience.
Yeah, and that's a valid point. If you're driving a car at 90 miles an hour, do you check your speedometer every year? Maybe not. Maybe you look out the window constantly, actually, and see where you're going. Evaluations once a year are kind of nuts. You have fall off every year.
So are there certain trends that you're seeing right now in our HR tech, or any gaps?
Well, trends, let's just start with the trends. I think the big trends are that there is a massive amount of technology change going on in every organization. Mm-hmm. No matter how old you are, something's changing in your HR technology. Mm-hmm. And the only reason is because there's so much more HR technology available. That flexibility is critical. I've talked to a lot of companies that are capitalized by investors, mm-hmm. and the technology they use has to mirror the way they want to grow. If it doesn't, then it's not worth it. So then they will change it. And I will say that the relationship in the HR technology market, the way relationships get formed and the way people work on the engagement is also changing. Even though there's a lot of change going on and a lot of choices, the way the relationships get formed and sustained is different. It's no longer like transactional and commodity. Yeah. And the companies that are with the newer technologies get that, and they're very committed to success of their customers. The customers need to get
it. Yeah, that's what I'm always saying, actually. You don't get it.
The customers need to start to evolve. And frankly, there's procurement groups in some of the very large global companies that really realize that there's a lot of change going on. Mm-hmm. And they're relying on the experts. But it's up to the HR leaders to stay current.
And how do they do that?
How do they do that? Well, following what the analysts are saying is valuable. And I would say don't necessarily get hooked on one analyst because there's specialists. Mm-hmm. So because there's so many segments in the HR technology, recruiting, and all these other areas, really look at the spectrum and be a good student. Select the conferences that matter to you based on either your industry or your goals.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Before we end this, I would love to hear, speaking of conferences, what you're up to.
Well, as an analyst, one of the big trends I recognized is that almost every month there is a new female-founded HR technology company. I thought there were only a couple dozen, and now it turns out there's almost 80 of them.
That's so great too, especially
look,
as a female founder
Yeah.
in HR technology. I think that's awesome.
Being as focused as I was as HR technology, I thought it was just HR technology that was growing that fast. And now I've discovered there are female founders in financial technology. There's like hundreds of them. The issues they're faced with are all the same. And that is that they're so busy running the business, it's difficult for them to fund the business and really look out in the future. And looking in the future and planning from there is really critical. What we did was create women founders in growth stage tech for that purpose. And so our first event, which is going to be one of many, takes place on June 7th.
I'm so excited about it. I've been sharing it. I think it's just a wonderful event. The way we met is I saw you post this on LinkedIn. Someone had liked it, and I'm like, I reached out to you immediately because I'm like, this is right up my alley. So I'm excited. I think there's going to be a great turnout. And
yeah. We're excited. We're going to have it be really intimate. It isn't going to be one of these giant expos. It's just a small, intimate group, less than 100 people. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to bring together the decision makers, customers, the investors who the founders need, and the founders all together so that that relationship could start to formulate. And maybe that's when the requirements begin.
Very good. If someone wants to learn more about this, where can they go?
They can go to growthstagetech.co.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being a special guest today.
Thank you.
I hope you'll come
My
back
pleasure.
and be a guest in the future. Anything for me, Brad?
You know, I love the .co domain. It's just a shorter, domain, right?
Yeah,
I've
that
been
just
seeing
came
that
out
lately.
recently.
Yes,
didn't
it did.
I like
Yes,
that.
it did.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
We're using it. Okay, you saved a character. The world types one less character every time they go to that URL.
It's current. That's what's meant.
It is cool.
current.
It's actually very hip. CO.
All right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Stay fancy, internet people.
Yeah, stay fancy. Thank you for listening to propsHR, an engaging startup. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll follow our podcast and check out our website at propshr.com. Do you have a question about our startup or employee engagement software? Email us at info@propshr.com or tweet a question to us at propshr using #propshrpodcast.